So now that I've got the rudder pedals installed, what I wanted to do next is start working on the steering. And the steering connects to the rudder cables between frame 3 and frame 4. And a lot of the stuff with the steering is not well documented in the plans. I mean, it's in the plans, but it's just pictures. There's not a lot of actual information. So I cut these out on the CNC machine. And again, there's just a picture of what these are supposed to basically look like with, I think, 1 dimension or something of the length. But these have to be bent at an angle because they're supposed to sit against frame 3, and they're supposed to be tilted at an angle like this and then bolted through frame 3 with a 80 thousandths plate on the back side. This is 63 thousandths. So what I need to do is basically along the bends, or the bends in the aluminum here, I'm supposed to bend this across there at 90 degrees, which is what I'm going to do next on the vise, and see if I can get these to fit. Everything else is going to kind of fit around these and kind of doing one step at a time. So what I think I'm going to do is try and get the pulleys installed on these bent and installed on frame 2, and then go ahead and figure out how I actually route the cables that are going to attach not only to the steering bar but up to the rudder cables. We're supposed to actually go through frame 2 with a tube similar to this, a very small tube that this cable fits in. This will end up being cut in half, and it's kind of supposed to be bent in a little bit of a curve so that the cable going from the pulley can go down through this tube through frame 2 and then point up towards the steering bar. And there's supposed to be a mount that's riveted to the bottom of the fuselage just forward of frame 2, but again, there's no real dimensions about how far in or the alignment, nothing. So I've got to figure a lot of this out as I go. I did want to comment about these cables, and I think I might have commented about this before, but let me just say it again. So these have to have these little ball ends swaged on there, and what I did is I just had Aircraft Screws make these for me. So I just ordered these. I think these are 3 foot long. I just ordered 2 pieces with the the ball ends already installed, and I think I got the whole set of cables with the ball ends on it for like 25 bucks. So it's not a big deal to get something like that. That's just a one-off. I'll never need this tool again that I know of to put these ball ends on cables. So I didn't want to have to buy a tool, and it was cheaper just to go ahead and order the cables that way. So let me just start working on this, and I'll have you follow along step by step, but let me go get these bent first. We'll drill the holes into frame 2 and see if I can get the pulleys clamped in where they need to go, and then we'll kind of go from there. Well, I made my first set here, and I just made garbage. So I'm gonna have to make these again. I probably could have salvaged these had I not drilled the hole in there and marked the hole where I thought it should be in this bracket when it's mounted to frame 3. Now, the angles are all off on this by a lot. In fact, the issue here is that when you mount this, such as this, on frame 3, and you try and line it up with the cable, even if you bend this quite a bit past 90 degrees, you can see I bent this quite a bit past 90 degrees so that it flows with the direction of the cable between frame 3 and the pedals. But what happens is as you start putting this down further, you can get the angle of this to match up with the cable, but if you keep sliding it up where it's supposed to be, you kind of keep moving it out. And actually, to get this in the correct spot to where it shows in the plans, I would have to trim this existing piece off here all the way down to the edge of the bolt hole, which doesn't leave you a lot of surface area to bolt to in order to get this position so that it's lining up with the existing cable. Because of course, once the cable hits frame 3, it starts to veer away from the body of the fuselage going to the pedals. So it's like I said, if you move this down, you can get the angle to line up better, but it's again putting this pulley quite a bit lower than the cable is, which you really don't want to do because you want that cable pulling as straight as possible and not pulling up or down. So I guess I'm going to try and make another set of these. What I'm going to do is not drill that hole in there, because then I can at least shave down this angle here and get it, rotated to fit, and then just drill it afterwards, which is what I should have done to begin with. But yeah, let me make another set of these and I'll try it again. So let me see if I can just show you real quick what the problem is before I make that second set. So this is the one I made right now, and this is supposed to fit about right here. And you can see the alignment with the cable, it's off. It's got to be all the way out about here, which would mean I'd have to cut about, like I said, all the way off to the hole to get it to fit where it's supposed to be. Now, if I keep moving this down here, I can get the cable to line up with it, but now it's way below in the fuselage where the plans it says it's supposed to be. And of course the cable, once it hits here, starts going, diagonally off the fuselage. So it's very difficult to have a bracket that's folded this direction that, lines up anywhere close to where you want it to line up. So anyway, yeah, a little frustrating. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do, but I'm going to try and bend another set of these and just make this part here that's the flange part that sticks out as small as possible. But I don't know. We'll see. I hate working with stuff like this where you don't have any dimensions, you don't know what you're supposed to do, so you just end up making a bunch of parts until one fits, which that's not fun. So let me cut another set of these. We'll try again. Well, the second one didn't go so well. I actually ended up cracking it. I noticed after I bent it, it had a small little crack on the other side, and I took a pair of pliers on it and just popped it right off. So I'm not sure if I'm going to have to anneal this, or I just bent this one a little bit too far. I'm not really sure. I had a pretty good radius on it, so I wasn't too concerned about the, I was using a piece of 1/8 inch angle with the radius on it, which usually works pretty well for this. But yeah, let me, third time's a charm. Let me try again. Well, I was able on the third try here to get one installed, and it looks pretty good. It's lined up pretty well with the cable here, which is probably the most important part. So I was able to use the annealing procedure to soften this one up when I bent it. I think I just got lucky on the first two. Since we are bending past 90 degrees, it is more likely to crack. And I think I did bend this one a little bit further, or at least these last two that I did compared to the first two that I did. So, but yeah, it's basically installed where it needs to go. Just trying to get things fit in here before I, kind of clean everything up and get ready to do a final install on it. But I want to get all the cables fit in here first to make sure I got everything where it needs to go. So what I need to do next is, well, I think what I'm going to do is work on the other side, try and do it exactly as like this one. I was able to just use the part that I cut and just bend it along the lines that were supposed to be on the part to bend, and it did bend to the correct size and position. I am going to have to cut the screw off just a little bit. It's not touching this support, but it's pretty close. That bolt's a little bit long. This one ended up a little bit long too because aircraft spruce didn't have the correct length. I think I needed a -18 instead of a -20 or something like that. I don't remember exactly what the measurements were, but I can cut a good 1/8 inch or so off that bolt too. But let me see if I can get the other one installed over there, and then once that's done, we'll start figuring out. Well, actually, we'll start getting the nose gear actually installed so I can get the crossbar that we're going to connect these cables to, so I can start figuring out where we need to drill through frame 2 here. So I now have both of these cable pulleys for the steering system installed. They fit great. I'm very happy with them now. I also found shorter bolts. I did have some number 10 bolts that were the right size for these pulleys. So what I'm going to do next is there's a little angle bracket that we need to attach, and I think it attaches somewhere here to these side rails, I believe. I've got to check that out, but I think we end up drilling out 2 of these holes, and then we actually install a little angle piece that's going to support the little tube we have to bend. That I guess I got to figure out exactly from here where the angle is that makes it go through here, and then catches whatever support's supposed to be over here, and then shoots up to the steering bar, which I haven't installed yet. So that's what I'm going to work on next. I'm going to check out the plans and figure out exactly where this is supposed to go, see if I can get those brackets made, because I think that's the first step, and then we'll figure out from here where to drill the hole here and how to attach this cable so that it's pointed up towards the steering bar. So the 2 rivets I'm going to take out are the ones that are just behind 120 millimeters. So 120 millimeters right here, this is where the front of this L bracket we're going to create for the cable to go through for the steering. And so right here at 120, we're going to take this rivet out just behind it, and we're going to take this rivet out back here, and then I cut out these little 50 millimeter long by 10 plates that I'm going to bend the end of it up here and drill the 2 holes then, and we'll have to drill these rivets out and then get rivets to go all the way through these, and we'll mount these where they need to go, and then a hole gets drilled in the front of this for the really small tube to go through that the cable is going to go through. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and drill these rivets out on both sides. I'll see if I can get the holes drilled in this in the right spot and get the end of this bent at 90 degrees, and I'll show you what it looks like when I get done. So I have both of the tube supports installed on each side. One's down there, and you can see the one over there. I drilled out the rivets. I just have Clicos holding them in, just trying to get everything positioned correctly. And then I started trying to figure out where to drill this hole into frame 2 over here. And what I ended up doing is just kind of going right in between those 3 rivets, kind of in the center, or between the 2 and then down just, I don't know, 6 millimeters or 8 millimeters, something like that. I tried to, use this pulley as a guide to try and figure out where the direction was going off this pulley to get through here, and then have it so that it would still come through here and end up, about at the end of that hole. I don't want to have, do too much bending around like this, so we need to get kind of a nice curve to go through there. But I think I've got it. I don't know of anywhere else to put this except for here, so this is what I'm going with, and I'm going to see if I can bend this tube to fit the curvature that needs to be made so that it kind of swoops through here and swoops up here and points towards the steering bar. So what I did is, this was just 12 inches of this really small, I think this is 1/4 inch outer diameter rod. I just cut it in half, so I have 2 6-inch pieces. They're a little bit longer than they need to be, but since I kind of have to curve one end a little bit more than the other, especially the one that comes out of here has to kind of swoop down and up, I might screw it up, and at least if I do, I can cut it off and try again. But I got to figure out how to bend this stuff without kinking it. It doesn't need to be bent much, it just has to have a curve to it, and I'm still not sure I'm going to get even a sharp curve in the end of this, because this is tough stuff. So let me see what I can do to fit one of these tubes in here, and I'll show you what it looks like when I get a little bit further. Alright, so I got both of these steel tubes curved so that they're following a pretty straight line from the bottom side of this pulley through there, through here, and off to the steering bar, which I didn't bother installing because I know where it goes and I know basically where the width is. And what I did is I just used an 1/8 inch cable, which I had, which does fit. I'm sorry, this is an 1/8 inch. This is 3/16, which, I'm sorry, how about 3/32? Let's try this. Is 3/32 cable. And I wrapped it around the pulley and ran it through here and just kind of got a trajectory out to here to just see if these were curved to the right shape. So yeah, I've got both of them just laying in there right now. To bend these, the easiest way I found to bend them was to actually stick one end of it in the chuck of my mini lathe, and then I was able to just bend it, and of course the chuck would hold it from spinning. And I could just grab onto one end of it, really nicely so that it didn't crimp the end of it or anything too, and I was able to just bend it by hand. So that seemed to work really well. I would say if you had a chuck even on a drill press or something, you could even use that to hold the tubing on the end while you try and shape it a little bit. But yeah, it looks good. I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and clean these parts up down here. This tube's supposed to get glued to this part here and glued to frame 2. I'm assuming just with like an epoxy or something. So what I think I'm going to do is this mount here, I'm going to go ahead and take that off, clean it up, allodyne it. I'm going to take this mount off for the pulley, get that cleaned up, allodyned. I'll get that bolted in permanently, and then I'll worry about gluing this in after the fact. I probably glue this in after I get the shroud made for this. There's supposed to be a protective cover over this so that the cable can't come off this pulley. So I still have to make that, and then I still do have to install the nose gear, which I do want to do before I permanently glue these in, because I want to make sure that, because this does rotate a little bit, I want to make sure I get this in exactly the right position with it connected through with the cables before I glue it in. So, but anyway, yeah, this is going pretty good so far. So let me clean up these parts, and I'll show you what it looks like when I get a few steps further here. So I went ahead and attached the top of frame 2 permanently. I pop riveted that in, and I also pop riveted the front of the center structure here so that I could start fitting the final landing gear, nose gear setup. I did create, using the same shock cord I used for the rudder pedals, I created a shock cord up here. And what I did is I did 3 wraps around with this, I guess it's 1/4 inch cord. That seems to be about the right amount of tension. Now, if I wrap those 3 around and before I put them in the airplane, if I tried to pull them apart with my hands, I basically couldn't pull them apart at all. So the force that you actually need is a lot more than what you think. Now that I have this in here, you can see that it, if I push down on the nose gear here, let me see if I can get the camera over here so you can see it slides up and down. And it's supposed to take about 180 pounds of force, so almost my entire weight sitting on the front of this should bottom it out, which it's probably pretty close to that. By the time it gets all the way up there, I can't even push it all the way down without trying to sit on it or something. So that seems like it's going to work pretty well. So now what I'm trying to do is work on the attachment that goes to the top of this bracket that connects up here to the top of the center section that's supposed to hold the landing gear up. So there's supposed to be kind of a lanyard cable and a spring that puts a little bit of pressure on to just lift up the weight and actually put a little bit of compression on these shock cords down here so that the nose gear isn't loose and flopping around like it is right now. It'll just fall all the way down to the bottom. So what I did is I went to I actually got this stuff, believe it or not, at Ace Hardware. So I got 16th inch stainless cable, and they did have the little crimp parts that will work in the tool that I got for the rudder cables. So what I'm going to do is just make a little lanyard that attaches to the holes that are down here in the front of this steering bar support. And then that's supposed to run up to a bracket that attaches here, which I still have to make. And then I went and got a, let me find the spring I got, hold on. Okay, and what I also picked up was this spring. It seems to be about the right force. Again, I think they mentioned something about 11 pounds of pressure on the front here. I don't know if that's exactly what this spring is supposed to maintain. But it's probably less than that. But this is a pretty stiff spring. It's very hard for me to pull this apart by hand. So this is what I'm going to attach to the front part here of the upper support, and then I'll just create a little lanyard cable that goes down to the top of here, and then try and make it short enough that it takes all of the weight off the nose gear here so that this isn't loose up here. But once that's done, then I'm going to actually start working on attaching the steering cables back to the pulleys that we were installing earlier. I kind of took a break from that just to try and get this all put back together so that I could start hooking up those cables and making sure that I got the tubes down there routed in the right direction once I attach those, and then just see if I can finish up those pulleys back there. So I'll keep working on this a little bit more. I'll show you when I get the nose gear support finished up here. All right, I got a few steps further here. I did get the retaining spring and the wire that connects attached to just hold the gear up. So when you're flying and you're not on the ground anymore, it holds the gear from falling all the way down. I did drill out the ends of the steering tube here, which you can see, and I put a washer on there, and it's number 3 washer again, and so it's the same washer and the same rubber pieces that I used for the stops for the rudder system. It seemed to fit really well. So what I did is I just ran the cables back through here, and I'm just going to go now and try and start attaching the pulleys, but I'm also trying to at the same time get the derailleurs cut and fit so that once the cable is wrapped around, I can mark where the ends of it need to be bent. I'll show that to you when I get to that point. But yeah, it's coming along pretty good. I took the whole gear apart again. I got everything greased, and I've basically put it back together now for its final, final assembly. I may actually take this gear leg off again at some point and maybe get it chromed. Originally I was going to paint it, and I'm like, the paint's not going to hold up at all. It does still have kind of that coating that 4130 has on it that doesn't rust too much. So for now, since it has grease on it, I'm just going to leave it and figure out later on what I'm going to do with that, because I don't have a chrome shop in town here, so I'd have to send it out somewhere. But Anyway, yeah, I'm just trying to finalize the few things I need to finish to get the steering system hooked to the rudder system so that I can basically say the rudder system's done. So let me go work on those pulleys, and I'll show you what it looks like when I get a bit further here. So I did get the steering cable hooked up here with the clamps that I made earlier. It actually works really well. The only issue I have is I did cut out that that derailleur protector on that pulley there, but I thought I left myself plenty of material on the ends to bend over and shape and have the cable going through it, but I actually made them still too small, so I got to make another one. I was going to put this on there and just put some tape on the derailleur and then just mark where the cable was so I would know where to put the entrance and exit points of the cable, which you're supposed to put a little bent over tab with a hole in it and have the cable go through there so that the cable doesn't come off these pulleys. You can't get these cables very tight for the steering bar because the steering bar is just this aluminum tube and it's not very strong. So you can't really, pull down on them really hard. I got them as tight as I think they need to be, but yeah, it's all working, and I did move the rudder pedals back and forth, and I could see the steering move, and it works quite smoothly and nice. So I'm just going to keep working on these pulleys and see if I can get these derailleurs done, and then I think the steering is finished. Well, now that I have most of this done with the rudder pedals, I had decided last night before I went to bed to say, hey, I wonder if the fuel tank still fits now that I've got, these pulleys and cables and all this stuff in here. Well, it doesn't. It's not the fuel tank's fault. I didn't realize I made a mistake when I made these pulley support brackets. And just to tell you what happened here, when I tried to put the fuel tank here in, these cutouts here on either side are designed for where the pulleys go, and then this little curvature here, cut out here, is for the cable that goes for the rudder pedals, and then the other cable goes around the bottom here. But what happens is because there was no dimensions really in the plans for those pulley support brackets, there's only a measurement that basically says what the height of that plate is and the length of that plate. And the length of that plate, I believe, is 78 millimeters in the plans. Well, when I went into CAD system and I drew it, I did 78 millimeters from the bend to the end. But the 78 millimeters was supposed to include the length of this and the bent part, which the bent part, because of that angle on the bottom, is actually a lot wider than the width of the plate on the back. And anyways, the end result is that I made a bracket that's probably 26 millimeters longer than what it's supposed to be in the plans, and I still don't know exactly what it is supposed to be because, again, what angle is this bend at? How long is this little angle on the back here where it's got this curve? But anyway, they're wrong, and I need to fix them. Now, it's not actually all that big a deal to fix because all I have to do is take it off. I need to move this hole back probably 26 millimeters and then just cutting around the end again. So it's going to be pretty quick and easy to fix. I haven't cut any of the cables, so it's not even a problem there. So I think I could just fix this pretty quickly in about 30 minutes. I should have both fixed and realodined and reinstalled. So that's what I'm going to do. So anyway, just wanted to point that out. That's what I'm going to fix right now, and then we'll retest fit the fuel tank here, and I'll show you what it looks like when I get it in. Well, it took closer to 45 minutes, but I did get the brackets there fixed for the pulleys, and the alignment on them is still perfect because, again, the angle of those was in the right position anyway. So this fits pretty good. I am getting a little bit of rubbing on the lower cable here and the lower cable here. It's this fuel tank. Something's a little bit weird with the fuel tank, and I haven't quite figured it out because it sits quite a bit above frame 2 here, but will sit on top of frame 3. But then it's like, I've probably got, almost 3/4 of an inch gap between where the lip is on the tank and the top of frame 2. And if I pick it up in the front a little bit and have it sit about there, that cable misses, and I believe this one misses too because it goes underneath it. So it seems like the tank itself has to be tipped just a little bit back, and I don't know, I'm not really tipping the tank back. I think it's just the way the bottom was made. and how it sits, I'm going to have to put some support underneath here and figure out how to fill in this gap, because there's, let me show you here. So the tank should sit about there, which is sitting quite a bit above, well, you probably can't even see it in the camera here, quite a bit above where it should be according to the tank. But anyway, this is looking good. So what I'm going to do here is now I'm going to try and get these derailleur pieces made and bent and fit on here. I'm gonna have to make a new one, because again, even the cables, now that they're moved back further, the angle has made a little bit smaller, but it's still not gonna make it, I don't think, with this plate that I made. I don't think I can bend these ends over and get holes put in them, but I'll see. So let me work on those, because that's really the last thing I have to do, is just get these I don't know, anti-derailleur, is that what it's called? The cable retainer, cable pulley retainer. So let me work on that. I'll show you what it looks like when I get a bit further here, and if I get those so they actually fit. So it does look like I'm going to be able to make this first attempt at making this anti-derailleur for this pulley. It looks like it will work. So what I did on this end here is I kept it long, just like I did on this end. They were identical. And I just measured 10 millimeters along the angle that was here, because that matched up to the cable. And then I just basically cut a strip here that was 10 millimeters wide down to here, rounded it off, and then just bent it over and drilled a hole that lined up with the pulley itself. So that seemed to work really well on this end. And then what I did is I reinstalled it and went back and went ahead and just tried to figure out the angle of the other cable. I actually took a picture of it with my cell phone so I could see where it was going. So you can see the aluminum that's sticking off the end here beyond the blue tape. That's what I'm going to trim off to get it to the actual angle of the cable. And then I'm going to do exactly the same, is basically just do a 10 millimeter wide parallel line to that outside edge that I cut off, and then bend it over just past the pulley there, and I think I can get the other side to match up too, and then I'll just go back and bend these tabs over. But I think this is going to work. I'll probably go ahead and make an exact duplicate of this for the other side, and try and do the exact same thing. But these almost need to be custom made as you're installing everything, because it kind of does depend on how all the angles of the cables end up before you can get it exactly right, so that this comes out of here at the right spot, both the top and the bottom, and matches the angles of the cables, which could be different on every airplane. So yeah, let me go see if I can finish making this one fit, and then we'll go work on the right side. Well, here's the first one that I bent and tested and test fit, and it does fit. The cables come out of here at the proper angles, so this one seems to work. I am going to make another one though, because I found a couple issues here. This radius right underneath these tabs that are bent across the top needs to be reduced a little bit, because as I started bending some of these, I had to get as close as I could to that radius, and two of them cracked. So what I'd like to do is just make these fingers just a little bit longer as far as how they interact with this radius here, so I can get a little bit more of a radius on the actual little tab. Now the other thing is these tabs are too short. I'm not sure why I didn't make them longer, but they don't travel all the way to the end of the pulley, which obviously is a problem, because it needs to cover the entire gap and all the way to the end of the pulley. But now that I have this kind of as a template, I can go back to my CAD drawing and actually modify my CAD drawing to match this almost exactly, and I can even cut out these little tabs here on the end, and even pre-drill these holes if I wanted to, because I think I've got this close enough that it'll work for both sides, and anybody whose cables are exactly in the configuration of mine. And I'm not so sure that the angles coming out of here are all that important. I mean, they could be off a little bit and it still line up with the holes. Yeah, let me see if I can cut out another set of these and bend another set, and we'll test fit them again. All right, well, I was successful in getting two of these made, cut out on the CNC machine and bent. They actually turned out pretty good, so I'm actually quite happy with how these ended up. So what I'm going to do is clean these up, get them Scotch-Brighted, get some Allodyne on them, and go ahead and install them with the cables. Now, it is very difficult to get these cables through these tiny little holes. They don't want you to oversize this hole too much, obviously. But that's a 16th inch cable, and of course it tends to unravel at the end. It tends to be a little fatter on the end. So I only want to thread these through here once, and then hopefully I'm done. But what I've been doing is actually using basically one layer of tape and wrapping it around the end of it really, really tight to make sure there's no little strands sticking out, and just kind of work it through each one of these holes, and then pull the tape off once I get it through. That seems to work pretty well. All right, let me put these on. I'll show you what it looks like when I get the cables all attached, and I should be basically done with the rudder pedals and the steering system at that point. So I did have a couple things that I need to finish with the rudder system. One of the things I just finished now was I checked the stop distance. So between this stop and where it hits these rubber washers is supposed to be 50 millimeters, so I tightened these clamps on both sides on the rudder cable so that it will now hit the stops here on the back side of frame 4. And the other thing I have to do is I have to get epoxy on this steel tube that goes through frame 2 here on both sides to secure that. The other thing I have to do is I do have to cut the cables off a little bit on the steering cables here, but I think I'm going to leave that for now just in case I do have to take this apart. I'm not planning on it, but it's a lot easier to get this back together if there's some cables sticking out. I haven't cut the cables off on the front side of frame 1 here yet either, which I'll do here at some point, but for now I'm going to leave the cables sticking out, like I said, just in case I have to take something apart that I'm not expecting here. But the cable pulleys look great. Everything is working nice and smooth as far as the rudder pedals go. I did verify that the stops hit there before they hit anything in the back of the airplane. So the rudder system looks like it's complete and it's working. The steering system also. So I'm very happy with how all this has turned out. I did also check, I can push down on the front of the airplane here, and the suspension system works quite well. And like I said, the steering system works. Let me see if I can push on one of these pedals and hold the airplane at the same time, and hold the camera with the other hand. But you can see steering bar, see the cables moving, and I can pull this all the way to this stop back there, which is right there. Go on the other side, pull this side. So yeah, everything's working great. It's nice and smooth, everything's centered, steering's working. So I'm going to call the rudder system right now done. Like I said, I am going to come back here and epoxy those tubes in, but other than that, everything else is rigged and ready to go. I've got good tension on the cables, the pedals are centered, the rudder's centered, got full travel. So that's going to be the end of this video. So again, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, and please like the video, and we'll see you on the next one.